Hi guys, it's Blackie and Bear, and this is going to be Old Wayz number 7, I believe. Number 7. And in this we're going to answer some of your questions where you've given us some ideas and asked us to go back and talk about some topics, and we're going to do that for you. So you had some housekeeping from a couple of the other ones you wanted to address. Go ahead.
In number 6, viewer Vaughn, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Tautenberg, was asking about the book that I was talking about that the British officer's wife wrote. If you go to the Townsend website and look it up, they have it in reprint. It's called The Backwoods of Canada by Catherine Parr Trail. Go to their website. You can order as many copies of the book as you want.
And he means James Townsend and Son.
Yeah, townsend.us.
Yeah, that's where you get it. Okay, and you got anything else you want to clear up?
They were just asking, what kind of coffee we like when we're in the woods, and
Yeah.
would we do a video on it? I like black coffee with a little bit of Splenda in it. That's it. I'm not a coffee connoisseur.
And to be honest, I'm not a big coffee drinker either. My dad was one of them that he'd drink 3 pots, in a day, easy. I drink coffee in the winter sometimes, but I'm just not a coffee drinker. I'm not one of them that's got to get up in the morning and have their coffee. So
I'll do 2 of these a day.
You'd be a teetotaler as far as my family be concerned. But anyway, okay, the first topic I want to cover is a gentleman asked me about, he said, comparing in the old days, the old ways, houses and stuff from back in that day versus today. Aren't our modern houses better than the old houses? Yes and no. If you're talking about a modern house with full electricity and air conditioning stuff and heating, absolutely. If you're talking about not having electricity, then the old houses are better, and I'll tell you why. One, well, for example, there used to be a place in Georgia that was called Westville, and they had a lot of these. Bear was one of the blacksmiths at Westville for a time, but they had historic buildings that were not reproductions. They just moved the building here, and a lot of those places you'd go up and the walls would be 1.5 feet, 2 foot thick log, and that was insulation, is what that was. Even in the height of the summer, you'd walk into these buildings and it was 10, 15 degrees cooler in the building than it was outside because the roofs were so thick, and they were shingles. They were wooden shingles. They were not black tar shingles, which absorbed heat and increased the heat of the house. The walls were very thick, and they were designed with high ceilings and very adequate ventilation. Modern houses do not incorporate those designs, and so you go into the house I grew up in, we had 10-foot ceilings. Every room had a 10-foot ceiling. Well, that was to give place for heat to go, and also for like smoke from lanterns and stuff like that to go up there. Walls were very thick. They were set up to not need or have air conditioning, heating. You had big hearth fireplaces for cooking indoors on a fire. And so from the point of view of, would it be better to build a modern house for an off-grid situation, or find one of these old original houses that was in a place where you would have the land and could live off-grid? If it's in good, usable shape, I'd recommend the old place because it was designed for that back then.
The older houses breathed. That when he was talking about the wood shingles, air could pass through. Mm-hmm. They would breathe. In my house is 100 years old, and in the wintertime, you can actually hear it expanding and contracting, mm-hmm. because of the give and take of the walls, of the roof, of the foundation. It doesn't hurt it, but it allows it to contract and expand with the weather. That's what we call breathing. Mm-hmm. My house was designed like a dog trot log cabin, It's not, but it was designed that way. It has a long central hallway, and all of the rooms come off of it.
And probably had a door at each end so you could open it up for airflow through
Exactly.
the middle of it. Yeah.
Now, there was some modifications done probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that changed that. But I have been considering seriously changing it back because of that. But, you know, my house was designed before there was such a thing as air conditioning. I still don't have central heating and air. I have window units, and I have gas heating in the rooms, so we can heat. If we're in a room, we can heat the room and not have to heat the whole house. And my power bill and my gas bill is actually much lower than my brother's or my mother's.
My house that I grew up in had been built in the very early 1900s, and we had 3 gas heaters in the house. One in the living room, one in the den, and one in the kitchen. The kitchen really didn't need it because you were cooking all the time. That heated the room. There was no heat in the bedroom. There was no heat in the bathroom. That was it. And it was set up that way because when the house had been built, it used fireplaces. Right before World War II is when they'd put the gas in to have that. But even then, the house was, like he was saying, it was a main center aisle going through the middle of it, a door at each end, so you could open the doors and get an air draft through the building at the height of the summer. That's the reason, if you look, a lot of these old southern houses had a big old porch on the front and the back. They had a screen door as well as a regular door. That way you could open the door up and keep the insects and stuff out, but you could get a breeze in. Every room had a big window that went way up.
Or several.
Or several that you could open the top or open the bottom.
Yes.
And it was kind of like working the sails on a sailboat. By where the wind was coming from, you would open or close windows in a pattern, open and close doors in a pattern to get an air draft through the house the way you want it.
You can also do that according to where the sun is at, because the breeze will flow from the hot side to the cold side, and you can get a cross draft through the house by that. So, in short, older houses are very valuable, and in their own way are very efficient, and they don't have near the expense that a modern new house will. There's so much insulation in the modern houses, they don't breathe.
And that can be a bad thing.
The air stagnates.
Radon gas comes out of the ground. And it's a modern problem where radon gas will build up in a house because during, especially the winter, you shut up all the doors and windows and the house doesn't breathe. And so that gas builds up.
There are parts of the country that have real problems with radon. We don't have it so much here because the bedrock, it primarily comes out of igneous rock, like granite, or what's another good igneous rock?
Used to be lava, pumice, whatever.
But anyway, we're basically sandy loam, a sandy clay soil.
Limestone, sandy loam.
If you want to get down to igneous rock here, you're going to dig for it. It's probably, 300-400 feet down.
Yeah.
Minimum.
But because of that, the old houses were set up that way. So if I was going to recommend to you an off-grid, where you're expecting truly off-grid, and that's the way it's going to be, get a design from back then. If you're going to build it to not have air conditioning and etc. Then go and put air conditioning in it, where you're going to use your solar, your wind, your water wheel, your whatever to power it. Because if you build the place to be set up without it, by adding it, that's just an extra layer, to have the heat, to have the cool. But if you lose that ability to produce, like an EMP, they've talked about how it can completely polarize and we would not be able to have electricity for quite a while.
It's 1887.
It's 1887, and suddenly I need to be able to vent and things like that. And that was one of the biggest shocks to me when I moved into the house that I'm in now with my wife. Her house was built in the 1980s, and the windows are those double windows, but they're small windows. And we have one bedroom that does not have a window in it. It has a door that goes outside, but it doesn't have a screen door on it. So there's no way to vent that room if it's hot, or if it's cold, there's no way to get heat to it. It's just, you're just gonna have to look at those guys back in those days that were living that way. They did it for a reason. And so study the design, you can update it. There was a guy here in Andalusia several years ago, a good friend of mine. He came in and bought an old house that had been, an old farmhouse that had been made in about 1912. He came in, he had a moving company come in and pick the house up and put a brand new foundation underneath it. Because originally it was just rock. They put a foundation underneath it. He put in all new plumbing onto it. He added insulation to it. He put a big central heating and cooling unit on it. The back side of the house had this great big old roof. He put solar panels up there to run a battery unit. He has his own well water. He has everything. He produces his own power. In the state of Alabama, you can produce your own power. You just have to have a meter where you're hooked up to the grid, and it will run backwards, so your extra power is feeding into the grid, and you get paid by the power company for your generation, right? That's an advantage, so that if you go through a long span there where there just ain't no sunlight, it will run back the other way and you can buy, so to speak. But usually he gets a check from Alabama Power every month, $200 so, from his big solar panel. And so his water is cared for, his sewage is cared for, got a septic tank, his power is cared for. He said, the only thing I pay is a phone bill. He doesn't have any of the utilities because he's self-supportive. But that old house, the way it was designed, lended itself. And a trick that I had learned with my dad was we took the hot water heater that was in my dad's house and we moved it to the attic. Well, here in the South, especially during the summer months when it's so hot, it's 150, 180 degrees up there. It's just ridiculous.
Just short of spontaneous combustion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you get up there and you can't even hardly breathe. You can't be up there in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Well, we moved the hot water heater out of the house up there into the attic. We did this in the middle of winter, by the way. And my dad got a new hot water heater. So the old one was still in good shape, but it was old. Okay? The plumbing was this. He brought the water in and hooked it to the old hot water heater first. So it goes in the tank, comes out, and then it goes into the new hot water heater that's actually powered up. The old hot water heater is acting as a reservoir, holding that water in 150-degree temperature up there in that attic. Then the water will come out of the new one and come down in the house to go to all the plumbing. The power bill dropped significantly because it's not running because it's in 150 to 180 degree heat. So that first tank, they're both heavily insulated, but what he would do is he'd go up there at the beginning of summer and he'd pull the insulation wrap off that first tank. So it's basically a steel drum. The heat would heat the water before it ever went into the hot water heater, and so it rarely kicked on because the water was already hot. You just have to have it in a spill bucket up there. It's inside of a frame thing with tin, and then there's a pop-off valve on all your hot water heaters. That was hooked to a pipe that went out of the house to the outside. So if there was a pressure release, it isn't going to blow up there, it blows outside. And that simple trick saved so much money, gave us unlimited hot water. Why? Go ahead.
My hot water heater is gas. Mm-hmm. So when my electricity goes off, I've still got hot water.
Yeah. Okay, the next question that we were asked, this gentleman asked about, I think it was a gentleman, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but it was saying that what happens whenever you're in a situation, you're in an apartment building, and the power goes out, isn't that going to eventually turn off the water, the sewage,
I
everything
remember
else?
that comment.
Yes, it is. What can you do to prevent it? Well, if right now, at this moment, bam, all the lights go out and they're not going to come back on for a while. Water works by hydraulic pressure, where the city is pumping water up into a tank and then it's gravity usually pushing it from there to your home. So you just got to wait for that water to be used up. So you're going to at least have probably a couple of days.
Yeah, if you'll look at photographs of even today of the New York City skyline, about every second or third building has a huge wooden water tank on it, on top of it, that the city's constantly refilling, and it's there for the tenants who it trickles down, like you said, by gravity to meet your needs.
Because they can't pump it from the ground up to every room, because that would cause all kinds of back pressures and everything else.
Too much pressure.
They just pump it straight to the roof and then let that tank distribute it throughout the building. Also, a lot of people don't realize that if the power's off and it's been out for days and you turn the tap on and no water comes out, etc., you've still got 50 or 60 gallons of water, because your hot water heater's full of water.
Yes.
The way a hot water heater works is the water comes in and it goes into the tank and it goes down here to the bottom, inside the tank, and then it comes out of the pipe inside the tank. That water level flows up and is heated by the heating coil, and then flows out of the tank going to your sink or whatever. Because of that, when the water turns off, boom, this is still full of water. And most people's hot water heaters are 50, 60, 80 gallon water tanks.
I had teenagers, mine's an 80.
80, amen. If you'll look at on the outside of the bottom of the water tank, there's a spigot.
Yeah, there's a tap.
There's a tap. I mean, it's like an outside thing you screw. You've got 50 gallons of water sitting there. So if the power suddenly goes out and suddenly if the city has a problem and suddenly the water is cut off and you've got to have water, your hot water heater already has 50 gallons of water sitting there for you right now.
Speaking of water storage,
yes,
we've been asked about, what do I do? Well, you can go to a big box, into the camping section, and you can get you one of these.
Yep.
This is a Reliance water carrier, and water carriers are coated in blue for safety. This particular model has got a spout on it and a pressure. Well, if you unscrew this and you have this pointed down, of course, and you adjust it here, it's got a cutoff. I had it loose so that I could store it and it would breathe.
Yep.
But when you're done, you turn it off. This whole, it sits like this.
You sit on the deck like that and you put underneath, just turn the
On the
tap on and
tailgate
close
of a
it.
truck or a camper or whatever. But it sits like this and you're filling out your spout. This holds 7 gallons. A person generally will run a gallon to a gallon and a half a day. So this is anywhere between, 3.5 to 7 gallons, depending upon your usage.
Yeah.
My recommendation, recommendation is that everybody in the family have one of these. And if you're anticipating trouble, go ahead and fill them up.
Yeah. It don't
You're
hurt
going
to
to
fill
use
them up.
the water anyway. I mean, it's not going to sit there and grow algae. But get everybody in the family one of these, and you can have, 3 days to a week's worth of water readily available per person.
Now, this is your drinking water.
Yes.
Okay. Something that we do down here in the South because of hurricanes and things like that, where it may be that kind of disruption. If you've got more than one bathroom in your house, you got an extra tub, you can simply set a clean trash can in that bathtub. You can set one of them big tubs like you get at Walmart for storage, sit it in the tub, and then take those heavy mill leaf bags, construction bags, barrel liners, They're 6 mils thick. And you can sit one of them in there. I like to double bag it and then take your shower and fill it up. That water is your wash water, your clean water, your whatever. So the cycle is this. I'm going to need to wash up for whatever reason because the power's off, I'm hot, I've been sweaty all day and I want to wash up. I will dip out of that water in a pan, take some soap and a rag, and I'll take me a bath out of that water. Now what do I do with this gray water? It goes in the back of the toilet. You lift the lid up and just pour the water in, and that's the water to flush the toilet. Toilets work by gravity, so if the city stops pumping water, as long as you can pour water in the back, it'll still flush. So long, and this is going to be the thing, guys, you guys are in the big city, you got other problems. City sewage on big cities, they have to have pumps to move the sewage around. It's not necessarily pure gravity. Like us, we're in small towns where it's either a septic tank or it's a gravity feed. So you don't have to worry so much about that, whereas the septic tank or the sewage is going to back up in the short term in these crises. But the bottom line is that water is my drinking water. So for food, etc., it comes out of there. All the other water I need to wash the kid's face, to clean this up, to wash a piece of dishes or whatever, that comes out of that container in the tub. See, just dip water out of that, use it. If it's wash water, when I get done washing whatever, I don't throw that water away. I put it into the back of the toilet. I have taken a one of those storage tubs and just put it beside the toilet and poured the soap water into it. So whenever I use the toilet, I can just dip out and refill. You know, just because it's full and I want to dash out this wash water, but the toilet's full, I ain't had to use it. I'll have me a container down there, and that's how you could get by for a while in your big cities. You've already got 50 gallons of water in your hot water heater.
Which is drinkable.
Which is drinkable right now, you know. I would suggest you get some sort of water filter. Walmart's got plenty of them. A lot of times in these crises, they'll make the announcement, boil your water, because it may have been contaminated. So having one of those life straws or one of those Sawyer filters to filter your home water is a good idea.
Or a Berkey.
Or a Berkey, or a Grail, whatever. Those are the way to go. Those pitchers that have got with filters have more uses. See, I can use that for my drinking water at home, and in this crisis situation, it will filter that water from the hot water heater, or they tell you to boil it, it will filter it. See? So that'll give you an advantage there. I hope that answers your question about the water. Got anything else you want to bring up, sir?
Well, in another episode, we were talking about food storage.
Yeah, caching. Yeah.
Caching. I mentioned this. This is one of my plastic coffee cans that I had stuck in the cabinet. And Blackie had mentioned taking the label off. Unfortunately, nowadays you can't do that because they heat seal them to it when they're manufacturing. Mm-hmm. But there's your pop-off lid. This is packaged orange drink. If you mix it by the cup, which it gives instructions for, 2 tablespoons per 1 cup, 1 8-ounce cup. That's probably 4 days.
4 or 5 days worth of something flavored
to drink. This is soup. This is probably 2 days worth of food per person. For one person, this is probably 2 days worth of food. And here's breakfast. This is oatmeal. This is probably another 2 or 3 days worth of food. Now, these are not packs or intended to be designed as, long-term food sources for a family of 4. Now, this is one person for like 3 days. But here's another thing about it. It packs up tight, And with the lid on it, wrap some Gorilla Tape around, some duct tape around it, and you can bury it.
It's
And
also a water carrier.
It's a water carrier too. So I mean, this is the Swiss Army knife of food caches. We were talking, he and I were talking last night. As far as caches go, did you want to get into that now, or you want to wait?
We can. Caching, for people that are worried about things going really, really sideways and your house being ransacked and looted and etc., having an emergency set somewhere else. Like Bear and I, we live on property that's got woods around us. It'd be easy for us to have something buried out here that you wouldn't know about. Old moonshiner trick to put things in the hollow trees or whatever. It goes back in history of being able to cache things that you thought you might need in an emergency. If you fear that your place might be completely looted and ransacked, and so, you know, civil unrest, you're in an area where this is a distinct possibility, having something hidden either in your home or close to your home. We've talked about how you can take and just get an extra wall outlet, and I get the double wall outlet, and cut a hole. Your wall has a series of 2x4s, and then on the outside and inside there's a piece of drywall or some sort of wall material, so it's leaving spaces between the studs. Get between two studs at a convenient place that doesn't look out of place, cut out the hole where a double set of wall outlet, the big cover about that big, we go. You got it low enough, about 18 inches or so off the floor, so you can put stuff down inside the wall and be able to reach your hand in there and get to it. Don't put it so high that you drop something you can't get it, or put it in there where you've got a way you can pull it back out. You can put valuables, important things, stuff like that. Something that I recommend that you do in this information age is on your computer or whatever, take and get a really good picture of your driver's license, front and back, your birth certificate, front and back, any other really, really important documents, okay? Put them on an SD card or a micro SD card and hide it in something. I've carried one in luggage before on a plane. People don't think about them or whatever, but by me hanging on to it, putting it somewhere where you can't go, ooh, and grab it. You don't know what it is, right? If I get mugged and somebody steals my wallet and I do get to law enforcement, they're going to have the ability for me to hand them that thing and plug it in and say, here's all my information. Here's my insurance card. Here's my car insurance. Here's my, all of that stuff. If all of that information has been stolen from me, I have it in a backup form. Real helpful. Anything else, sir?
No, woods caches where you put stuff in the woods, yeah. Oh, that does bring up something.
Yep.
You can also take a section of PVC pipe, just
6-8
regular,
inches, something like that.
And you don't want, you can get the thick wall, the Schedule 40, but generally Schedule 20 will suffice. That's the thinner wall. And you can glue a cap, whether it be a domed cap or a flat cap on one end, and what's called a clean out on the other. And I did not have time to go by my local hardware store and get one to show you. But there's a thing called a clean out that has, you glue the rim to the top of the tube, and then you unscrew the nut on it, which is the clean out valve for plumbing. You put what you want inside the tube through that hole, you screw it shut, as you go take it where you want to, and you bury it. It's not going to pick up, it's not going to degrade, you'll be safe.
It'll be there for years.
Yeah.
Grab your coffee can thing, sit up here a second. Now that, as y'all know, my good friend Dan Lutz passed away. so I don't feel bad about sharing this. Dan and I got talking about caches and stuff. And you see how this is shaped, this square with the lid on it. If you'll go look at, I know PetSmart and a lot of the other big dog places, there's this big dog food cube they got that's about this high and will take like a 30-pound bag of dog food. I think they got one that'll hold a 50-pound bag. And it's got an O-ring seal screw top on the thing, and it's heavy duty plastic. It's designed so you can leave it out there and the dog can gnaw on it and he ain't getting into it. And they were like $35. I pointed that out to Dan. And Dan went and got 6 or 7 of them and put caches in the ground because of that. And he left them buried 2 years and dug them up, and they wasn't no leaks, no nothing. So
well, you carry a screw top jug, which you put your hammocks and stuff in.
Yeah.
Perfect. It was a pickle barrel, wasn't it?
No pickle barrel is what it is.
And they're not, they're
about this big, about 30 gallons.
Yeah, about the size of a beer keg, a smaller beer keg, but. They're this tall, or they're this big around, and they're this tall, and they'll hold, enough product for 4 or 5 people for 4 or 5 days. Easily. And you can take them and you can personalize them. We talked about this in an earlier video about doing the kids their own and putting their toys and stuff in them. Mom and Dad have their needs, put them in their barrel. But we keep coming back to the same theme that this is not hard. Old Wayz is not hard, but it does sometimes take a little thought, a little creative engineering. That's all we're doing, is thinking and using creative engineering. Get your thing, Mom and Dad. You can also use lock top plastic trash cans. They work very well in this too.
Well, I've said before about having to store something out in a like a garage or a building. A steel trash can.
Yes.
And you put whatever you're going to put in it, close whatever in the steel trash can, and when you get about 2 inches from the top, take you a big piece of cardboard that's cut circular and will just wedge in, and then you put a line of red cedar shavings on top of it, take the groove inside the lid that locks onto the can, fill that full of Vaseline, put it over the top and set it down and lock it, and you ain't going to have no bugs in it, and you ain't going to have no rats in it, because they can't get through the steel either.
Right. And
there's nothing there to give them the hint that there's anything in there they'd want. And so I can store something in an attic, out in a garage, out in a barn or whatever, and know that it's going to be safe from the critters and everything else. So when I've got to have it, it's there.
Right.
And that's a good way to hide stuff. Sherlock Holmes said, to be invisible is to be so obvious that no one will acknowledge it.
Right.
You mean be right out in the middle of it. You don't hide a needle in a haystack, you hide a needle in a bunch of needles.
That's a line from Saving Private Ryan.
You hide it where they can't find
one needle in a stack of needles.
Yeah, it looked like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so, and I think I mentioned this earlier, we talked about make friends with a plumber and get a hot water heater. A dead one that looks good but doesn't function anymore. And then you take it someplace like a machine shop or something, have them cut a door in the back of it. Figure out how you're going to set it in your garage. Have them cut a door out of the back of it, put hinges on it, where you can lock it and padlock it. Clean it up, make it look like it's brand new, and go have a couple pieces of pipe coming out of it. Just drill a couple of holes in the wall in your garage where it goes into a blank wall somewhere. Slide that big old hot water heater up there. When you walk up and see the hot water heater, you don't think that's a safe, do you? No, you think it's a hot water heater. Does anybody steal a hot water heater? No.
You never know.
You never know.
You may have the oddball.
You may, but the thing about it is, how many, you and I have been around, how many times have you come into somebody's carport and there'll be a hot water heater sitting there?
Another thing, you can see the pipes that you run through the wall have threaded ends, so you can secure. If you can get to the back side of that wall,
backside and secure it so it
to the
don't just
wall,
slide out.
so that they can't just knock it over and keep going.
But that way you can get to it if you need to, and have a bad day security cache in there where not something I'm gonna get to in 10 minutes, but it's there and I know where it's at.
If you know a nurse, you can get them another use for this. There's 1,001 uses for this little box, but you can put together a medical kit, just basic first aid, and have your nurse friend help you to do that, and you'll be ready. You don't want to do anything too fancy because you can run into liability.
Yeah. Stay within your training.
Yeah, stay within your wheelhouse. Do not, don't try to get a chest tube for your basic first aid kit unless you have been specifically trained in how to put in a tube to vent a chest, a pneumothorax.
Yeah, and don't think about doing tracheotomies. Don't think about doing that
unless you've been specifically trained to do that in an EMT program.
There's a book that you need to look up, and it's called Where There Is No Doctor, and it was published by these people that were going to these third world countries, and it was a hands-on real world, had to deal with a lot of medical problems where you're not going to have medicines. So you get a broke leg, what can you do? How should you do it? And how long are you going to have to expect before you could heal and be able to walk on that thing if you did it right? And this was for people that was out in the middle of nowhere and there ain't nobody coming and you can't get to any kind of medical.
You are your own rescuer.
You're it. You're it. And so the name of the book was Where There Is No Doctor. Then there was one that was Where There Is No Dentist. Everybody cringed at that one, but man, an abscessed tooth can make your life hell. And so look up those type things, educate yourself, and get that information in your library, study it, have a good working knowledge of it, so when the situation does arrive, you've got a way to deal with it. You've at least got an idea whether you can or this is something beyond my ability, we just need to cut and run for help. That's the way to do it. Well, sir, I think that's about it for this time. What we're going to talk about next time?
How elaborate do you want to get?
What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking a lot of cool weather things.
Yeah.
That involve fire and cooking.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but when we were shooting 6, I just about melted.
Oh, we were sitting there sweating like, I mean, guys, and here we are just running. Somebody pointed out that we had a starter can that you could see. What we didn't point out in the video was that starter can was full of water. It was an old starter can, and it was completely empty, and Bear had filled it full of water, and so that was our hose down and douse. It was not, that was an anti-fire, but we didn't point that out.
That was our firefighting equipment.
That was our quick firefighter for a hot spark, because we're going to stomp it out besides that. But
and we had taken my rake out of the truck and had raked out probably a 12 by 12 foot area, so a spark would really have to work to get out of it.
Right.
Not saying they couldn't.
But we knew what we were doing and we were watching it. But at the same time, it was just even that, walking over there and being near that hot coals.
Even, I was a scoutmaster for about 10 or 12 years, and he's been oriented with scouts for the same amount of time. We've got a lot of time in the woods, but in good scout tradition, and he can vouch, I took my rake and holding it in my hand, I made a circle.
Made a 360 that
I made
big.
a 360 and raked everything inside the circle. We had a good laugh off of that one, but it worked. But
we're going to wait till it cools down a little bit to go back to cooking because it's just too hot.
Yeah, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's cooler today because we had some rain yesterday, but it's still in the mid to upper 80s at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the humidity is running somewhere around 97%.
Yeah, I'm sweating right now just sitting here.
You can just about cut it with a knife.
You feel it going in there, you lungs. Anyway, Thank you for watching, guys, and we'll have another one pretty soon. And once we figure out what we're going to talk about, put down there in your comments. Give us some ideas of what you want to do. We will talk on just about anything. We want to talk about what you want to hear.
Somebody mentioned grits.
Grits.
In the comment section. It's on the to-do list.
It's just going to be for when we can cook them.
When we can cook, when the weather cools, that will probably be late September or early October. This is the end. This is the last day of June.
Yeah.
So we're looking at probably 6 or 8 weeks before we can do good cooking videos. The pot roast.
Yeah.
You know, I'm game. And there's something that very quickly, if I may, when you're cooking with a Dutch oven, you can take like my deep dish and put it on coals, put coals on top, and then take a smaller one and set it on top and put coals on top of it, and you can stack Dutch ovens. That's the brilliant advantage to a Dutch oven. Instead of having 17 pots in a circle with 17 fires to tend, you can stack them maybe 3 deep and have one stack to tend.
I've done 5 deep before. We at Florida that time at that rendezvous, I was doing buffalo hump roast in the bottom. Then I had 2 things of vegetables. Then I had a dessert, and on top was a bread.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm probably not that adventurous. I would probably break it into like 2 stacks of 3.
No, man, it's fun when you do it. One big stack. Now you gotta really know your stuff, because you gotta know how you gotta adjust it. So this is the hottest, so it's gotta be on top of that, and that's gonna cook the slowest. And this right here.
Yeah, you cook slowest. The slowest stuff goes on the bottom.
The top Dutch didn't even have any coals underneath it, because the heat column of all the stuff below it was slowly making the bread rise.
Yes.
Yes. Guys, thank you very much, and please leave any questions or comments below, and we'll get back with you as soon as we can. Till next time, I'm Blackie and Bear, saying safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.